Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of To The Point podcast. I'm your host, Noah Warren, and this is actually episode 50, so a little milestone here for To The Point. But joining me tonight is my good friend and UFC aficionado and, former wrestling just champion, Brodie Theriault. Brodie, thank you for joining the pod tonight.
That was a pretty gleaming introduction there, Jug. Thanks for having me on.
No, I mean, you were a good wrestler back in the day, so it's fair to say, I think.
We'll go with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a fan for sure.
Right. But yeah, tonight we're gonna be talking about the UFC. A lot of what happened 2 weeks ago at UFC 257, the fallout of the lightweight division with Conor McGregor losing, and where we see this heading. But Brodie, coming into the fight, Poirier McGregor, who are you leaning on? Who do you think was going to win, and were you surprised with the outcome? Obviously.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. It's hard to ignore the star power that Conor's got. I follow the sport. I wouldn't say super closely, but I'm quite familiar with Poirier. And if you look at the fight history of these guys over the past year, Poirier has been fighting some of the toughest guys out there and winning. And even still, I can't help but think that McGregor was going to win this. Again, I mean, you're going off of what you saw a year ago, and you can't get that star power and that flash out of your head from 2 years ago. So I definitely had Conor in my subconscious and really kind of dismissed Poirier, as I'm sure a lot of people did.
Yeah, I was in the same mindset as you. I was like, okay, this is just another throwaway fight for Conor. Like, they gave him Cowboy. That was just a gift. Then they get Poirier. He'll dispose of him. He'll go win the belt. But, I think the key to the fight was obviously the leg kicks. I mean, I think it wore. I mean, we saw after the fight, Conor could hardly walk. I mean, that front leg that he was just getting brutalized was just caving in on him. And yeah, he probably got TKO'd a little bit, I think, but the leg giving out was more telling than, the actual knockout, the decision.
Absolutely. And it's funny you say that. I mean, they've talked about this several times since that fight happened, but these leg kicks aren't overly, they're a relatively new technique that a lot of fighters and even fighters from 5 years ago, which would have been Conor's prime, aren't used to. I don't think people realize the effectiveness of that leg kick, and especially for guys who are fighting good boxers and want to keep their distance. So it's a way to chop that leg out. And a lot of boxing relies on you need all your power comes from your feet. So if you can knock half of that stance out and half of that stability out, these boxers become quite a bit less effective, and it's a lot harder to get your knocks in for sure.
Yeah, and so when Conor gets knocked on the ground and he's lost the fight, what was your initial thought? Like, what were you thinking when you saw him go down?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I knew, and they've talked about this in previous interviews and stuff, and then a bit of the reporters talked about this, but they said if Poirier can take a couple knocks and stay in it, that might be all he needs. And you kind of saw it in Poirier's body language. I'd say what did it for me was that takedown that he got. I think it was halfway through the second round, I believe, or it might have been the first. Anyway, that was kind of a tide shifter for me. Again, Poirier's a boxer and he's a scrapper. He's not a wrestler by any stretch. Neither is Conor, but I think that takedown was certainly there, first of all. So good on Poirier for noticing that, but it was definitely a surprise for Conor. So that was a huge shocker. To see him knocked down with basically a taste of his own punch was pretty shocking to me. I still go back and watch it. I think it was just a big win emotionally for Poirier. I know he didn't go into it as much and kind of acted like this wasn't a big deal to him, I found at the end of the post fight, but I think everyone was shocked, including him. So
yeah, that was so strange to me, how he reacted to winning. It was as if he wasn't excited. Like he was, my charity and my kids and my wife's back home. And I'm like, are you not even excited? Like, clearly you're going to get a chance at a belt if you have a brain. And he's like, oh no, I'm not really interested. Let's do it. Me and Conor, let's do it again. Like, I just found his mindset so strange.
Yep. Yeah. I don't know if the lack of crowd had anything to do with that. It might have had a bit to do with it. I know he was talking after the fight, and he said, I'm a fighter and I'm going to keep doing this because I have my eyes on a title, but I don't really enjoy this process anymore. In a weird way, I can kind of relate to that. That those types of combat sports take so much out of you physically, but also emotionally. I mean, you're essentially going to war each time you step in there. And I was a wrestler and I felt that. So we didn't strike, right? So I can't imagine what it was like. I mean, you're going in there, you're punched in the face. It's a lot of pressure. And even being counted against. I mean, Poirier's been bet against his whole career essentially, and keeps showing up. So I think part of him is a little tired of that. I'd love to see him stick around. I'm confident he can get that belt, but I don't think we'd see maybe a whole lot more of him if and when he does win it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And so after the fight, obviously Khabib Nurmagomedov still has the belt as of right now. He said he's retiring. He said he doesn't want to hold up the division, even though that's what he's doing right now. But so out of the title picture that night, we also saw Michael Chandler make his debut coming from Bellator, just knock out Dan Hooker in a really impressive debut. What did you make of him and his prospects in the lightweight division?
First of all, let's talk about that flip.
Yeah, that was pretty cool, man. It's pretty athletic.
It was cool. I don't know. Yeah. I was, to be honest, I had heard of Michael Chandler. I hadn't really watched much of his fights, but typical explosive guy, a background wrestler who loves to bang too, though. So I was impressed. I know he talked about a Khabib shot or a title shot. To me, I can't help but feel that he needs one more under his belt. I know Bellator is the second most respected league, I'd say, behind the UFC, but I think he needs one more big fight to really put his place in there. But I was blown away. I mean, Dan Hooker's no chump either. His Muay Thai and his knees and his striking are incredible. So I mean, he beat him at his own game, and I think Hooker was quite shocked. I mean, we didn't hear a word out of him. I think he just had his first interview on the fight like a few days ago. So I think he was pretty rocked. So no, I was impressed.
Yeah, no, I mean, he was a lot of fun to watch just as a fighter. I mean, it was before the main event, but he was entertaining. Obviously did the flip after, which was, it was what it was. But, for being in the same division, him and Conor, I mean, he looks like Conor was so thin when he came out to fight for me. Like he looked like anorexically thin, and you see Chandler, who's just like this Greek god, and he's like ripped to shreds. But on paper, if those two fought, I mean, Chandler looks like he's going to kill him.
Yeah, that's a tough one. See, thing about Conor, and I noticed in his last fight, is his fighting style's changed quite a bit. He held more of a karate stance before, more of a wide-legged lower stance, and that helps more with kicks. He basically held a boxer stance the whole time. I know people are talking about, they're showing before and after pictures of Conor's stance. They're saying it's stiff. I wouldn't call it stiff. I'd call it a change in stance and a change in technique. I don't think that's going to fly with Chandler. I think he's going to catch you. And it's a little too high up. Chandler's a collegiate level wrestler, a D1 wrestler. He's gonna be back to the well and kind of do some soul surgery, and hopefully he can rise from this. But I think Chandler's a bad matchup for him at the moment.
Yeah, I think it'll certainly be tough because Chandler is a better knockout puncher, it seems like, anyway, than Poirier. And I mean, Poirier just TKO'd him. So McGregor loses, Chandler wins. That was kind of the headline of UFC 257. But I mentioned Khabib. He still got the belt, but let's do the hypothetical. He's gonna vacate the belt here in the next week, 10 days. Which two fighters should fight for the belt next in the lightweight division? If it's up to you and it's based on who deserves it, we'll talk about the fight you want next, but who deserves it? Who would be in it for you?
Yeah. I'm a bit of a purist. So usually who deserves it, I like to think is pretty much in line with who I want.
Right.
I'd love to see Charles Oliveira go for that. He's on an 8-fight win streak right now, and he's on fire. And not only is he on an 8-fight win streak, but his last fight against Tony. I mean, yes, Gaethje beat Tony, but no one's beat Tony like Oliveira's beat Tony. I mean, he out-Tony'd Tony. Just completely mauled this guy, and this guy's a legend. I think he deserves a shot. I think he's one of those other guys that gets overlooked. So in an ideal world, I'd like to see Poirier and Oliveira go for the title. Do I think that's going to be the matchup? Sad thing is no. I don't think there's enough business involved in that fight. I hate to say it, but and judging by Dana's track record with fights, I don't think that's the fight he's going to make. I can't help but I'd like to see Gaethje in there if I can't see Oliveira, but I think Gaethje Poirier might be a good fight. Poirier's beat Gaethje before, but it was quite close. I think it went to third round, and they were both gassed out, and Poirier had a big rush on there and TKO'd him at the end, but it was by no means a blowout. So I think that would be a good fight as well. But in my perfect world, it's Oliveira and Poirier for the title.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm like you. In sports, I like to reward people that deserve it. And as much as, people like Conor McGregor and, he's the big name, he hasn't earned anything. I mean, he's right. Even, Ariel Helwani, who loves Conor McGregor, he loves to prop him up. And I like Ariel, but he likes to prop up the big name fighters more than, the underneath guys. He's even like Conor's like 10th right now in division. If I was ranking them, like he's not even close to the top. But yeah, Oliveira is an impressive dude. I mean, his wrestling. I mean, I don't know if anybody's better than him right now. If he gets you on the ground, good luck, because he's gonna maul you to death. Like you said, the Tony fight wasn't even close. And Poirier, I want him to go for the belt. I want him to want it. But like you said, I don't think that's his. He wants Diaz. He wants McGregor again.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get it. Maybe it's because he's a fighter and he's got a couple screws loose, but and maybe it's money too. I can understand that, being his age and what he's been through. But yeah, I'm with you. If not, Gaethje, I like watching Gaethje fight anybody. But yeah, like you mentioned, the Gaethje Poirier fight the first time. I mean, Poirier won the fight, but he left the fight. He could barely walk. He was like Conor's leg. He was battered. So a rematch of those two wouldn't be a bad option either.
I'm with you. I know I did quite a bit of thinking on this, and another matchup I'd love would be Chandler and Gaethje. They're both their wrestling level is quite near to each other. They're both D1 wrestlers. I think they're both All-Americans, and I think Gaethje might have been an NCAA champ at one point. But these are fighters who are also showmen and love to strike. It's funny because they come into the UFC or come into their careers as quote unquote wrestling specialists, but these guys love to throw more than they love to wrestle. Wrestling seems to be a second hand, a backup plan for each of them. So I think that's a brawl, to be honest. I think Conor, I'd love to see Conor Tony. I think that's kind of where both of them are at. I mean, they're both in a bit of a rough patch. So I think the winner out of that matchup would kind of throw themselves back into the mix, and we could go from there. But yeah, it's kind of where I'm at. Gaethje Chandler, I think would be a great fight.
Yeah, I'm worried that it's going to be Poirier McGregor 3 for the belt. I mean, that if Dana White's track record, that's probably what it's going to be. And it just doesn't sit well with me because I just have a feeling Conor's going to win it the third time around, and he's going to get a belt he doesn't deserve, which his fans will love. But I don't root for anybody, but I'd like to see the right person have the belt. And for a sport, that's my biggest fault with the UFC. And we can talk about lightweight division when it comes to rankings. It just doesn't sit well with me that fighters that get opportunities for belts that don't deserve it just because they're flashier than, really good wrestlers / fighters. Yeah.
UFC is a weird sport that way. It's up there with some of my favorite sports, but that's my one bugaboo with the sport, if you will. It's at the end of the day, it's a business sport, and they're going for the money fights at the end of the day, and it sucks. I mean, we're in an era now, and these fighters are talking about it a lot, but we're in an era now where Instagram followers basically dictates who you get next, and your clout online. So, for the pure sportsman, it's something that you got to fight with, and it can be frustrating at times. But I'm hoping that Dana, I think he's getting a lot of pushback on this one, and I know a lot of the journalists are covering this, and I have a hard time believing that. Well, I shouldn't say that. He's done it before. Conor could end up in the title fight, but I think it's such a hard call to put him in there now. Like he's gonna gonna piss a lot of people off. Not that he's gonna post that before, but we'll see.
Yeah, what would worry me if I was Dana White is if I see guys like Oliveira, like Gaethje, possibly Poirier, depending on what fight he gets, revolt, and just say, well, I'm out. Like I don't need to do this anymore. Especially a guy like Gaethje who's actually voiced it publicly that if McGregor gets a title shot before him, or even before he even said Oliveira, that he would quit, that he would retire. I don't know if he'd do it, but I think some fighters need to stand up and kind of make a point, because this is going to happen forever.
Yeah. And not only is it going to happen forever, but I think it's getting worse. Back in the GSP days, well, first of all, social media wasn't near what it was. And that seems to be the engine behind who gets popular and who doesn't. I mean, it is in UFC and it is outside the UFC, right? That's really what it comes down to in terms of popularity these days. So I'd love to one day see the UFC turn into some kind of a bracket, and they keep track of wins and losses just like they do with every other sport. And again, yes, they do rankings, and rankings have a bit of a driving force as to who gets matched up with who. But again, those rankings are subjective at the end of the day. There's no dollars and cents alongside those. It's what have you done for me lately is the type of league that is. And it's disappointing to the sportsman. So one day I hope, I think you can agree with me. One day I hope that they'll sort that out and make it more of a fair fight for these guys who aren't focusing on their followers, and they're focusing on their craft. So
right. So for you with the ranking system, would you just say if you're winning at the time, if you get it, you mentioned Oliveira, he's got an 8-fight win streak. Do you base that when it comes to rankings, saying, okay, he should be number one right now because he beat X and X, and move it from there?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's going to be as cut and dry as that. I think there's always going to be a bit of subjectivity to it, because it gets complicated. But I mean, how can you ignore someone who's on an 8-fight win streak? And let's not forget, an 8-fight win streak is a good 2-3 years in the UFC if you're very active. So, this guy's been a dark knight and been a silent killer for the last couple of years. And, he doesn't know English very well. It's probably a large part of the reason why he's not as popular as he is, right? Which is a shame. And I mean, if you take a look at what he did to Tony, I know Tony's kind of on the downside right now. I think he's getting older, but I mean, you can't ignore the clinic that he put on there. That was just, I didn't see that coming. That was just incredible to me. So I think he's got to be next in line, in my opinion.
Yeah. So yeah, I really hope that is the fight. And so in the perfect world, we get what we want. It's Oliveira, Gaethje, or Oliveira, going down another path. It's not with Conor, it's with Poirier. Who does Conor, you mentioned Tony. Do you have any interest in watching McGregor Diaz 3?
I do. I think now might be the time to do it. It's a fun fight. I do appreciate that part of the UFC. That's kind of what keeps people in. I don't want to totally dismiss that side of the sport because it's a lot of fun. And I think just the fun they've had in these past 2 fights and the publicity and the kind of animosity that they pulled out of each other for those fights would be awesome again. Saying that, I truly think Conor's a different man than he was 2 years ago. I don't know if you're going to get the same Conor at the pre-fight press conferences that you would otherwise. Having said that, I think Diaz might not let him be so reserved. If anybody's going to pull that demon back out of Conor, it would be a Diaz brother. So that excites me quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'd rather see them fight the third time than Poirier McGregor. I just don't think there's enough there when it comes to rivalry. Like, they had 6 years between fights between these two, and there really wasn't any hostility. I mean, they shaking hands, talking about how they love each other's wives and congrats on your kid and all. I'm like, okay, Breakfast Club here. Let's go. Diaz and Conor, I think they respect one another, but they do have a hatred there that I think will exist forever. And, Diaz is fun because, he's just going to beat the hell out of you or get the hell beat out of him. So it sounds brutal, but in theory, but it is a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, he's a scrapper through and through, and he's one of those OGs, right? Like he's been around. Well, his older brother was in the GSP era, and he kind of came in towards the end of the GSP era. So he's one of those guys that's a perfect example of someone who, you know, is popular, could have maybe have a title shot, but doesn't have that star power to push him through. He's quite inconsistent. That's fine. I mean, 1 minute he's interested, 1 minute he's not. He goes away for a year, runs a triathlon, and decides what's coming back. So I think Conor Nate is the fight to make right now, to be honest. Yeah, or Conor Tony.
Yeah. No. Yeah, either of those I'm fine with for Conor. I mean, you can put that on a pay-per-view and it can be the main event, and it doesn't have to be for a belt. Like, I think people are going to buy that regardless. So I'd buy that. More happy than Poirier McGregor for the lightweight belt. But so there's always the other option where we got Khabib's got the belt right now. He hasn't vacated it yet. And now there's rumors this week that George St. Pierre could come out of retirement and fight Khabib. You know, both sides are kind of coy about it. Dana White said that fight's not going to happen, but Dana White lies every second word he says. So how big a fight do you think this would be for the UFC? Like, do you think this is like a milestone fight for the company?
If they were to put this together, I think this would shatter any records that we've ever had. GSP was just he was a larger than life star. He was the Conor of his time, and he was a Conor of his time who had the record to back it up too, and the well-roundedness to back it up. And keep in mind, it's Khabib and GSP both are pretty respectful guys. Like, you're not going to hear a peep out of them in terms of trash talk. That might be the only thing that would hold this back. The contest there. I mean, they've talked about it for years. I think Khabib wants that fight more than anything. I don't know if it was just a money thing that didn't work out or what. I know Khabib's got this thing with his father, and his mother doesn't want him to fight anymore now that his father's passed. But I would just lose my mind if that actually happened. I have my doubts. I mean, they've mentioned this before. It's a lot of bullshit on UFC journalism, I find. So it's hard to sift through it sometimes. But you know, I have my doubts, but I would be stoked to see that.
Yeah, likewise. You know, just obviously George St. Pierre being a Canadian, being one of the greatest fighters to ever step in the octagon. I mean, him fighting arguably the next greatest fighter. I mean it's pretty incredible. And I agree. I think it would shatter records. I think the true UFC fans are going to buy that every time. You know, the casuals may just poke in for Conor McGregor, but it's it's definitely something I'd like. But we mentioned it before. I hate it for George St. Pierre right now. He hasn't fought in forever, and he's going in there against the little beast that is Khabib. I mean, I see that as a big mess for him.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, we had that GSP comeback. What was it? Maybe 2 years ago now, when he came up to, what was it, middle to fight Bisping? Or
Yeah, middle. Yeah,
might have been light heavy. Anyway, that was he shocked me there. I shouldn't have been so shocked. But I think Khabib's a whole other beast here. I've never seen a wrestler like him. And you know, GSP's known, he's a great wrestler, but he's more well known for his well-roundedness as a fighter. And I just don't think, I mean, you combine his age with the fact that he hasn't been in a while. I think Khabib takes this. I hate to say it. I love my boy GSP, but I don't think he's got much here, to be honest. It's just age, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we've seen Conor not fight for a year, and I mean, GSP hasn't fought since I think 2017. He fought Bisping, so
yeah,
that's a long time between fights. And what do you think they'd have to fight at? Because I don't think George is dropping to 155 to fight. Like, they'd have to. What do you think? Meet in the middle?
They'll probably do a catch weight, I think, if anything. I think, well, Khabib's he's a heavy lightweight. I think he might walk around at 160, 165. Mind you, I think GSP is probably walking around at like 180, 190.
Yeah, he said
so.
In an interview a couple weeks ago, he's walking around like 185 now.
Yeah. So I'd almost, I don't know. They might do. I wouldn't be surprised if they made GSP come down a bit. But who knows? I think the heavier they go, the better it is for GSP. Because really, I think all he's got in this fight is a striking. I don't think he can keep up with him wrestling wise. So if he can more weight, the more punching power, and he might be able to catch him. But has anyone caught him yet?
Mm-hmm.
And let's not forget, Khabib's got a fucking chin on him.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse my language.
No,
he
good.
can hang with the best of them. And give a few of them himself too.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he took shots from Conor, and they didn't really phase him. I mean, so
yeah,
Conor's a striker. So
well, did you see how he walked down Gaethje?
yeah,
Just no respect for his striking at all. Just walked him down, and Gaethje's got dynamite in his hands. He's amazing, and he knows it. And,
yeah.
It's amazing to see. I'm gonna miss him for sure.
Oh yeah, he's a wonder to watch. I mean, he's just like you said, he's so confident. He knows how good he is, but at the same time, he kind of gives his opponent an in. Like Gaethje's like, oh, I just landed a shot on him, and then like 30 seconds later, he did that amazing takedown to his leg, and he was getting choked out like within seconds. I was like, okay, that's just pure dominance. But
yeah.
But
and the fact that he submitted him, I mean, and let's not forget, Gaethje's a collegiate level D1 wrestler. It's not like he doesn't know what he's doing on the ground. I mean, he's beat the best guys in the States, some of the best guys in the world before he was a UFC fighter, and he makes them look like he hasn't wrestled before. That's kind of what he does, right? It's pretty incredible.
But if he doesn't fight George, if I was him, I wouldn't fight again. There's nobody there that would really interest me, and I don't think anybody could beat him in the lightweight division right now, the way it stands.
No, and it's funny, you see. You see a lot of greats kind of push it a little too far and kind of take a few losses and kind of go out on a bit of a sour note, in my opinion. Anderson Silva is a good example. I think he should have quit. Hung up the gloves 10 years ago, maybe 5. But he's still there. I think he just fought his last fight there this year against who was that? It slipped my mind right now, but yeah. So I think he left at the perfect time. In my opinion, I think he's the undisputed GOAT. I don't think you can really argue with that. I mean, he's never lost in his professional career.
No.
29-0. It's incredible. Yeah, we'd love to see him go to 30, but I'm okay with him leaving, to be honest. I think he's shown what he needed to show. I don't think he needs to prove anymore.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And the lightweight division will be interesting to watch. Obviously, the pay-per-views are kind of lined up until April right now, but you got to think Poirier, he won the fight, so he's not going to have to wait that long. I think he could fight probably in May if they really wanted him to.
Yeah. And like you said, I don't think they have any other option, but I hope he's in that title fight. I don't know how they couldn't give him that title shot. So yeah, he's a fighter, man. He's been fighting consistently for the past 2 years. He hasn't really taken any time off. So I think getting him in there sooner rather than later is probably better.
Right.
He can ride this high a bit, and confidence would be at an all-time high right now. So I think if he's got any shot to take the lightweight title, it should be soon.
Yeah, and moving on from the lightweight to also UFC 257, there's this rising female star in Amanda Ribas. She's a Brazilian. She's a big social media star. She's kind of Ronda Rousey-esque. I think that's how they kind of want to promote her. And she's coming in fighting Rodriguez, and she's a big favorite. Like I said, she's promoted as this next big thing. And she dominates the first round. Kind of looks like she's going to
cutting out there a bit there, Jug.
Oh, okay. You back now?
I think you're cutting out. You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Just having some technical issues here.
Got it. I missed that whole thing. Sorry about that.
No problem. I was saying on UFC 257, we saw Amanda Ribas. She's kind of being promoted as the next. I'm going to say Ronda Rousey. I think that's fair to say. Maybe Amanda Nunes. Before the fight, she goes in. She fights Rodriguez. She dominates the first round. Looks like she's going to cruise to a victory. Then in the second round, she basically got knocked out twice. She gets just whacked by Rodriguez. Herb Dean's like, should I step in? Should I not? She's kind of glossy-eyed. And then he's like, no, and Rodriguez starts celebrating, and he's like, no, the fight's not over. So we're all like, what the hell? And then, Rodriguez about 10 seconds later connects again, and then he has to step in. But what do you make of her as a fighter? And what did you make of the stoppage and how that went down?
Yeah, I guess talk about the stoppage first. That was strange. You don't see that very often. I don't know if Herbie might have touched her, maybe put his hand on her. That might have been what triggered her to stop. They drill it into fighters' heads. They say you basically, you fight till the ref pulls you off. And that's for situations like that. I mean, it's quite possible that Hebus could have came to right there, and then you're back to a regular fight, and it could have changed tides right there at that point. And that was a weird stoppage. But yeah, props to Rodriguez for basically putting her away 2 times. So that fight was, like you said, I mean, I had Hebus. I think everyone had Hebus coming into it. I mean, rising star. They've been promoting her quite a bit. Yeah, like you said, kind of the next Rousey, next big female personality to come into it. But it's hard to keep that going when you lose.
Yeah.
I think she just got caught. I'd like to see them run that back. I think they're both really close. I'd like to see them fight again. I think Hebus could maybe take that one.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that rematch either. And I think, it's something Dana White would be interested in, just because he wants her to keep winning. Obviously, I mean, he wants her as his next big star. And this is something I think a lot of sports have struggled with, Brodie, but marketing women. The UFC, they struggle to do it. I mean, they got Ronda, they got Nunez. I mean, name me another fighter they've really done a good job marketing. I mean, it's tough. The whole female division, and strawweight, flyweight, what have you, it's hard. You really don't know any of the fighters before you see them if you buy the card, obviously. But other than that, there's no real household names in the women's game.
Yeah. Part of that is, and I've noticed it even with Ronda Rousey, there seems to be a huge gap between these superstar fighters and the rest. They're at a point with Amanda now, they don't really know what to do with her at this point. I mean, she's cleaning out the featherweight division. She's cleaning out the bantamweight division. Anderson, I think, is who she's fighting. And this is on this, I think it's on is it on the Adesanya card or the Usman card?
Yeah.
She's fighting.
I think, it's the
Usman.
Yeah, I think so. I can look that up.
Anderson, who she's fighting, and I was reading up on this today. She's on her last fight of a 6-fight contract.
Oof.
And they're saying they can't remember the last time someone was fighting for a title and didn't have another fight left in their contract, and with no indication that she's going to resign. So to me, it seems like they're kind of giving her last ditch effort and get her out of the league because she's getting older, and it's just another kind of a throwaway fight for Nunez to win. I don't know if they know what to do with her, so it's going to be interesting what happens there. But again, like you've got Valentina, you've got Jacek, you got Jaylee Wang coming up. But apart from that, it's pretty sparse. They have a hard time finding, I think, high level talent, at least right now. The sport's growing for sure, so I think in the next coming years you're going to see that grow, but they're in a bit of a rough spot right now, I think.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, like you said, I kind of thought of on Jacek, she was really the big name for me, and then she got beat. That shocking loss that she got. But yeah, hopefully they can do a little bit of a better job, because I've started to follow the sport more closely. But even for me, I call myself an above average casual. It's tough to know all the fighters. So obviously there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of different fighters, a lot of different events, but I think they can do a better job. And yeah, Nunez, she's fighting on the card with Blachowicz and
Adesanya.
Adianza on March 6th. Yeah, she's in the co-main event. So
okay, yeah,
but
that's going to be an interesting one too, I think.
Yeah, so talking about that card, we'll move back to Usman Burns later because that's an interesting one.
Sure.
But with that UFC 259 March 6th, I mean, you got Peter Yan, who's fighting for we got three title fights, him, the Nunez, and then Blachowicz, Adienza. With the main event there with Blachowicz, Anienza, they're both they're fighting to unify the belts. Anienza he's 20-0. I mean, he's a really impressive guy. But do you give Blachowicz any chance of winning that fight?
Blachowicz is a beast. You got to give credit where credit's due. I have a hard time shaking the feeling that Adesanya is going to do to him what he did to everyone else. His striking is next level. You don't see someone that big usually move like he does. It's pretty incredible to watch how smooth he is. I mean, you see that stuff out of a lightweight or maybe a welterweight, but you don't see that kind of movement out of a middleweight or light heavyweight. And he's moving up for this fight, I believe. So it's going to be interesting. I think he's going to be one of those guys that you're going to see for a long time, Adesanya. He might go undefeated for a while. Like I mentioned, Anderson was on the downslide, but he also made easy work of Anderson, which is no small feat in any case. So it's going to be interesting. I know. That's going to be something. I'm going to have to keep an eye on that guy. I think he's going to be breaking records, I think, down the line. He's not very old. I think he's late 20s. So
yeah, he is.
He's got
26 or 27. So he's got a long runway here if he wants it.
Oh, he certainly does. And I don't know. We'll see. I mean, Blachowicz could surprise me, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's definitely the clear favorite. I mean, he's just a great fighter. I mean, not much he doesn't do well. I think he can knock you the hell out if he wants you to. He can take you on the ground, choke you out. My big worry for him is, we kind of talked about this earlier with Nunes. What are they going to do with him? When he wins this fight, he's moving up, he's unifying belts. Like, who's his next competition? That's the worry when you do this, because, one of them's going to win, one of them's going to lose. So the loser can drop down, kind of work himself back up, kind of the Max Holloway route. But sure, I worry about him and, how the UFC will put him in fights, because, some of the guys, before the fight, he's going to win. And this one I wouldn't say is an obvious one, but, putting him in that division, I think some of them are just fights that will be for him, be like, okay, this is a joke. Like, just get me my money. I'm done.
Yeah. I think of one does come to mind, and that's another huge blockbuster fight, but Jon Jones. And it's hard to trust what Jon says, because he's in, he's out, he's up, he's down. But if they could line that one up, I think that's a great fight. The only problem I see for Adesanya is I don't think Jon wants to move down. I think they want to do it at heavyweight. Yeah, that might be a little too heavy for Adesanya. I think if they could get it down to light heavy or middle, which Jon does have that weight to lose, I think you got a real fight on your hands. But I think the size might be too much for Adesanya. But if I were to pick one fight after, assuming Adesanya wins this next one, I'd love to see him and Jones go at it.
Yeah, no, that would be great. I mean, Adesanya, he already said it. He said, I want to fight Jon Jones. Like, he's already saying, I'm going to win this fight. I want Jon. But do you think Jon would rather face the winner of Miocic Ngannou than Anienza? Or
that's the other thing. Yeah, there's a lot of options there. I think Jon would probably take that Stipe fight first. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm saying that as if I'm assuming Stipe is going to win. Ngannou's got dynamite in his hands, as we've seen before. So that I really don't know what's going to happen between those two. That's a great matchup. I'm excited for that one.
I'm excited for that one too.
I'm also not surprised if Jon's just talking too. I mean, he does a lot of that. So we'll see. But yeah, I think either of those matchups are good. Honestly, I think I like Adesanya's chances more than I'd like Stipe's, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Stipe's too slow, in my opinion.
Yeah, Jon, when he's on his game, I mean, he's one of the best ever. I mean, he's got all the PED shit, and I'm not a big fan of that. When you get caught, I lose a lot of respect for you when it comes to the greatest of all times and things like that. But he's beaten Daniel Cormier. I mean, he's beaten pretty much everybody that you'd want him to beat. But yeah, if I'm Anienza, I want Jon Jones, because in his mind, honestly, me personally, I think he can beat him. And talk about legacy. I mean, beating him, that puts you closer to the Khabib conversation, where you're talking about guys being
GOAT status,
beating champions, like, great in their sport. I don't know if Khabib has a win on his resume that would be as impressive as Adianza's with John Jones.
Yeah, yeah, and part of that's because Adesanya and John, both very well rounded. That's really the only knock you can give to Khabib is, he's not, unless you're a fan of the sport and you're a purist, he's not overly entertaining to watch. But like you said, I think there's definitely a conversation to be had if Adesanya could put John Jones away. He's not that old. It's funny, John. Who knows where John Jones would be if he wasn't, so distracted.
Right.
That's putting it nicely.
Yeah.
Distracted. But yeah, it's weird for sure. A lot of stars around right now. Yeah.
We'll talk about Usman and Burns in a second, but we talked about Miocic and Ngannou. Do you think old Frankie's got a chance?
Yeah, I do. I mean, all he's got to do is connect, right? I mean, you saw with Alistair Overeem, he knocked him into, another dimension. I think that knockout of that one made me wince. Yeah, he's a puncher for sure. I think Stipe is going to wrestle him, to be honest. Stay as far away from that right hand as you can. Wouldn't be my strategy going in, but I still think it's going to be a good fight, though. Ngannou's a great athlete too. He can keep up with him. They're both in great shape for their size, so I think I could see that going 4 rounds for sure.
Yeah, I like. Yeah, I mean, he's obviously got a puncher's chance, man. I think he's got the best hands in UFC right now. He's scary when he's throwing punches. I mean, he's gotten a lot better since that fight he had with Derek Lewis, and it was so boring, and neither of them threw a punch. Like, he's in way better shape now. I think he's better prepared for this fight with Miocic than he was in the past. And I hope it goes through. I hope he gets everything he's hoping for, because he's probably never going to get one again if he doesn't win.
It's kind of where I'm at too. Yeah. I think he's definitely got a shot, like I said. But yeah, we'll see on fight night.
The other thing for Jones, maybe John Jones fighting Adianza, and the better chance is that Miocic takes so much time off. He fought Cormier. This is one of his quicker runbacks because he's been taking like a year off sometimes between fights. I mean, he fought Cormier, I think, in July, and then this past August he fought him again. So he's fighting in March, so it's a quicker turnaround time. But I'm sure if they're gonna fight in March, end of March, I'm sure Dana's gonna be like, okay, you're fighting in August. I don't give a shit how you feel. Like, get ready. You're fighting John in August. But maybe the Adianza fight becomes a bigger possibility if Miocic is taking his time.
Yeah, it's funny. Like John's kind of got that Conor power over Dana too. He can string things out really as long as he wants. I think if you're going to see John fight, it'll be at the end of the year, to be honest. I think they're going to do that from a marketing perspective too. I think they want a lot of time to build this up. But yeah, like you said, I think ring rust is a real thing. We haven't seen it really negatively affect Stipe all too much. I mean, I know he lost to Cormier once there, but came right back and got that trilogy win. So we'll see. I mean, obviously, with Conor, it's a real thing. It affects some fighters more than others, I think. So we'll definitely see what happens. But yeah, I know if I is in there, lofty goals, lofty dreams, but I'd be fighting as much as I can.
Yeah, no, agreed. And so next weekend, obviously, is the Kamaru Usman Gilbert Burns fight. It was supposed to happen in July. Burns tested positive for COVID about 10 days before the fight. Then Jorge Gamebred Masvidal had to step in, fight for him. Really wasn't that close of a fight, but he's a great fighter. Only one loss on his resume, 17-1. But how do you like Burns's chances going into this tilt here at welterweight?
Yeah, I like them. He fights really similarly to Kamaru, I find. He can do whatever. He's a great grappler, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, has shown it several times, but also has dynamite in his hand. But I mean, Kamaru, and what impressed me about Kamaru is just the athleticism that he has. He is another old wrestler, but a wrestler loves to throw. his mental toughness, I think, is something that's got to be commended too. Fighting Colby is not easy.
Yeah.
All that crap that he pulls. And he fought through that buzz and that crap and really, and Colby came at him and gave it to him good. Like that was a good fight.
Mm-hmm.
And pushed through it, and the record speaks for itself. He's consistent. I think that's what's gonna win it. But I certainly don't count Burns out. So forget they're teammates. So Burns would be quite familiar with how this guy fights and vice versa. So it's gonna be good. If I had to pick, I'm gonna say Kamaru gets another title defense. But I think Burns is close behind as a welterweight champ here in the next year. He's young.
Yeah, he is. But yeah, I'm with you. I like his chances too. I think like you said, Kamaru's so big. Like he's only fights at welterweight, but he seems bigger than he is. I mean, he's just a dude. Like he fought Masvidal and he just basically like absorbed him. Like Masvidal couldn't do anything. But I think Burns will fight back a little more. I think he's got a little bit better punching power. He's not going to get suffocated as easily as Masvidal did. But I think Usman. We mentioned Adianza. I think he's one of the better fighters in the UFC. I mean, he's impressive to watch. He's not always the funnest to watch, I'd say, because he can win grappling, and for purists, that's probably great. But if you're a casual, you're probably okay. I want to see two guys just punch it out. But he does what he has to do to win, and that's all that really matters. I mean, when it comes to winning and making a living, that's what Usman does. I mean, one loss in his career, and he's only gotten better and better.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's great at blocking out the noise. I think that's a big part of it. And they used to talk about Tyron Woodley kind of in the same light, but I think the fame and the crap, I guess.
Oh, we just lost Brodie here. Connection might have cut out a little bit, but I think he was saying Tyron Woodley was a champion in the UFC. He was a great fighter, but he didn't, Woodley didn't care how he won. There was fights where people were booing him, and he just said, I don't care. I won. I still got the belt. Screw you guys. And I can appreciate that because who cares? I mean, it's not about the fans at that point. It's about winning. Yeah. But for Usman, he said this week he wants to fight Masvidal again, saying if he beats Burns, he said he didn't do enough to beat Masvidal. He wants to knock him out. He kind of wants to shut him up a little bit. Is that a fight that intrigues you, or are you kind of like, okay, I saw it once and I don't need to see it a second time?
Yeah, I mean, the fun of the UFC, I see a lot in Masvidal. I think he brings a lot of energy and fun to it, but he's just not there. I think. Yeah, I mean, I think he could knock him out. I don't think I'd pay for it, but I like seeing Masvidal fight normally. I like that he's one of those guys that has been around forever and just recently has kind of, come to the top and then has turned into a fan favorite. But I think Masvidal might be better off. I'd love to see him and Nate run it back. I think that's more his lane. I don't think he needs to be up there hanging with Usman. I don't think it might be a good money fight for him, but other than that, I don't think it's much.
Yeah, so you mentioned you wouldn't pay for it. So what's your criteria when you're gonna buy pay-per-view? Like Usman next weekend, is that something that you're interested in getting, or are you just gonna see who wins? Like how do you look at different pay-per-views and when to buy and when not to buy?
Good question. Everyone's got their favorites. Skill wise or non-skill wise, I definitely have guys that I like to tune into. Like for example, Askren and Masvidal. The beef there alone was enough for me to go, well, I think I'll tune in. But like I said, the skill wasn't there. That was definitely a money fight, and there's definitely a place in the UFC for that. But yeah, it's kind of a case by case thing, I think, for me. Like I've got a lot of my favorites. I tend to lean towards heavier bouts, more middleweight, welterweight. Welterweight used to be my favorite. Back in the GSP days, I wouldn't miss a GSP fight. But yeah, I think it's case by case for me. It could definitely be a fan favorite fight every once in a while, but I'd say I'd gravitate generally towards good matchups. essentially.
Right.
Styles make fights.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think the UFC's done a good job at spreading out some of these great fights. So they got Usman next weekend, then they got the next pay-per-view, they got 3 title fights. And then the next pay-per-view, they got, Miocic and Ngannou. And those are all pretty tough for me to say, okay, I'm not going to buy it. Like those are all good matchups and good pay-per-views that, they've already got me. I'm going to buy it. Usman next week. I already know it. Like, I don't really want to, but I'm going to.
No, first off 2021's big for the UFC for sure.
Yeah. No, they're good at that. Let's talk before we close out the night here. Let's talk about the Holloway Kattar fight. That was Max Holloway is a crazy dude.
Oh man,
he's fun to watch, but he hit Kattar like something like 450 times or something in the fight. It was insane.
Yeah.
And halfway through it, he's yelling at Daniel Cormier and talking to Dana White, and he's clearly a weird dude. But what do you make of him in the fight, and then his prospects moving forward?
Yeah, so that wasn't 400 strikes, but that was 400 significant strikes. So total strikes is in the 700, high 600 range, which is out of this world. Like I've never seen anything like that before. And you know what? Props to Calvin Kattar. Like he's a tough SOB, man. Like to hang with him for 5 rounds, like, and they could have called that thing after the 3rd round.
I thought they were going to at the start of the 4th round. He hit him hard there, and I thought.
Oh yeah. I don't know how he tough through it. Just tough old Boston boy, I guess Calvin Kattar is. But yeah, it was. And you talk about the zone. Holloway was in the zone, man. He couldn't miss that night. Yelling at the commentators on the best boxer in the UFC. It's pretty funny. I don't know if I agree with it, but he's definitely up there, man. What impressed me about Holloway is his ability to just shrug off losses. Like Volkanovski beat him twice. It's hard to convincingly beat Holloway, but Volkanovski did a good job. But I also think that we're seeing a new Holloway in a rebuild here. I think so. I would look out for that flyweight title for sure, or that featherweight title. Excuse me.
Yeah, he's a guy, like you said, he lost to Poirier twice. He's lost to Volkanovski twice, and he just comes back. And I think Volkanovski's fighting here soon too on paper. It might be on the Miocic one, but I assume even if he doesn't win, I think Holloway probably deserves the next title. Even losing twice, he probably deserves that 3rd chance after that impressive outing. Yeah,
he's got Brian Ortega here in a few weeks' time, which is no small fight. But I think Volkanovski will take care of Ortega pretty convincingly, and I think that's definitely the next fight to make is that trilogy. I don't think you can ignore it. I mean, it's a similar situation. There's really no one else at this point. There's about 3 or 4 guys there, kind of sitting at the top, and I think Holloway's earned his. But that performance, it's hard to ignore that. I think he's earned his 3rd shot at this title. And honestly, like I said, if he fights like he did then, I know Volkanovski's saying, yeah, he's not gonna, once I shoot and take this to the ground, he's not gonna be able to throw his punches. But I mean, we'll see. Yeah. Every fight's a new fight, and anyone can win on any given day. So I like Holloway's chances 3rd time around.
Yeah, no, likewise. He's fun to watch. He's a crazy cat, so I get a lot of entertainment from him. But yeah, a lot of UFC action coming. I mean, it returns this weekend. Volkov in the main event against Alistair Overeem. We got my guy Derek Lewis fighting in a couple weeks. AKA Black Jesus.
Yeah.
But a lot of great pay-per-views. But we'll be tuned into it. And but Brodie, thanks for coming on tonight. I really appreciate it. And you'll have to come back on and we'll talk about some of the outcomes in the next few months.
Yeah, we'll do this soon there, Jug. Thanks for having me on, buddy.
Nope. Thanks to Brodie and everybody. Thank you for tuning in. For To The Point, I'm Noah Warren. He's Brodie Theriault. Everybody have a great night, and we'll talk soon.